Well, I did it. I finally finished watching all 8 episodes of The Acolyte, and it didn't even take me that long to finish it, right? Oh, I'm sorry, but can you blame me? It's just so hard to be engaged by this absolute nothing burger of a show. I see all the discourse online with people swearing up and down it's either the worst thing Star Wars has ever done or that it's the best stuff since the original trilogy. And I'm just kind of sitting here confused because I don't think either of these things, because I didn't feel much of anything from this show. Initially, I was very excited when they announced the concept for this show. A murder mystery in the context of the Star Wars universe? Awesome. It's set in the High Republic, an era largely unexplored by the main set of movies and TV shows? Hell yeah. And the main character is a Sith? Sign me up. I was so ready to see a fresh take on this universe and see a different kind of story. And while yeah, it definitely is a unique story, it's sadly not a very good one. It's frustrating because there is a lot of potential in this show, but it's hiding. It's hiding behind a plethora of glaring issues. It's not the worst Star Wars show, but it's definitely not the best either, so let's get into it. Spoilers ahead, by the way. I mean, if anybody watching hasn't seen it by now, then they're most likely not gonna watch it, but I figured I'd just throw that out there anyway. The Acolyte mainly follows two sisters. Well, kind of sisters, named May and Occupational Safety and Health Association. No, but seriously, her name's Osha. So anyway, Osha reunites with her former Jedi Master, Sol, after she is accused of murdering a Jedi on a distant planet. The two set out to prove her innocence and find out who is committing these crimes, but in a shocking plot twist, it's revealed to be her twin sister, who is an Acolyte, which essentially means a Sith follower who is not an actual apprentice. Now, the characters in this show are very hit or miss for me. May/Osha has to be one of the flattest main protagonists that I have ever seen in a Star Wars story. Amandla Stenberg is actually giving a good performance, but I kind of feel like she doesn't have that Star Wars main character staying power. You know what I mean? Like, the charisma's just not there for me, personally. And it doesn't help that both characters are written with zero character traits and the most baffling motivations that don't even seem to matter that much by the end of the story. Osha's turn to the dark side is not set up well at all. Like, her reasons for it are there, but they're pretty flimsy, and we never really get any insight to how she feels about it. And what little character development May has is rendered pointless by the end because they wipe her memory. And I hate the memory wipe trope with a passion. It's so lazy. Any investment I had in May as a character is now completely useless. And on top of it, the scene itself is just nonsensical.
Sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I started that fire.
Like, what are you waiting for? Run!
I can attempt to wipe her memory. Remove any trace of you or me. Permanently.
Wait, you could do that the whole time? That probably could have been useful during some other points in the show. But overall, I think I can say that Kamir is a pretty cool character. If I ignore the ridiculously obvious twist that he's this guy, then he makes for a pretty compelling villain for me. That is, until he takes off his mask.
Oh, hell no, man. What the?
I hate it when a Star Wars villain is like, just a regular human. Most times, I feel like a Star Wars antagonist needs to be a creepy looking alien or have like a cool mask or something. It's just not very effective to me when it's just like, a guy. It's just not intimidating. There's a few exceptions, but this guy is not one of them. However, I do like his role in the story. I think there's some decent depth to him. I like how his armor renders a lightsaber mostly useless. That big fight in the middle of the show is kind of a mess, but I do think Kamir has some great moments and some cool attacks. He's got some aura, something this show is very lacking. And while I think his villainy is hindered by him being just a regular human, Manny Jacinto is giving a good performance. In the unlikely event this show gets a season 2, I am somewhat interested in where his story goes. So as I'm recording this video, it just got announced that Disney canceled The Acolyte. So, yeah. Soul, on the other hand, is the saving grace of this show. There are very few characters that kept me watching. I found most of them to be dry and severely lacking in traits and motivations, but Soul is definitely the exception. I think I can say that he is one of my favorite Jedi in a long time. I really enjoyed his arc. His care for Osha, coupled with his guilt over his past mistakes, makes him a pretty compelling aspect of the show. Just like the rest of the characters, he makes some very baffling choices, but I like how his innate desire to do good actually ends up being his fatal flaw. And this depth and emotional resonance is thanks in no small part to Lee Jung-jae's performance. I think it's so cool how he learned English just so he could star in this show. Like, say what you will about the series, but loving Star Wars so much that you learn an entire new language just so you can play a Jedi is a whole nother level of superfan. I can definitely say that he's one of my favorite Jedi in a long time. And if the show ever continues, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Annie's Dead.
What's wrong with you, bro? What the heck? You tripping, bro? You tripping!
The other side characters add next to nothing to the show for me. I was excited when they announced Daphne Keane in the show, but she doesn't get anything to do. She just dies. I was excited when they announced Carrie Ann Moss in this show, but she doesn't get anything to do, and she just dies. Look, I get that you want to make a high-stakes show, and I don't mind the fact that a lot of the characters die, but the impact is not felt when we have literally nothing to emotionally attach to. It just makes everything ring hollow. That goes for almost all the other Jedi in this show. They don't have anything to do. They have no discernible traits or personalities that separate them from one another. You could swap most lines of dialogue. Hell, you could swap whole plot lines between any of them and you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. It just left me feeling indifferent about a good 80% of the characters, and that is not a good thing. Except Basil. I hate Basil. I hate this little freak so much. I seriously have the most irrational hate for him and I have no idea why. He just makes me mad every time he's on screen. Also, you want to see something funny? I was doing some research for this video on my phone and Google gave me quite the thought-provoking poll. I don't know guys, this is a tough one. Let me know who you'd pick down in the comments. Personally, I'm taking Dinner with Jay-Z. Like I've said though, I really do like a lot of the lightsaber fight scenes in this show. This show has had some pretty questionable moments as far as the editing goes.
Hey, relax, hey, whoa, relax, okay?
What the hell was that? But I felt that it was actually quite passable for the majority of the lightsaber duels. That huge fight in the middle of the show, while it did feel hollow, was super fun to watch. It was honestly one of the few times in the show that I didn't want to take a nap. It's just a lot of fun in Star Wars when you have this insanely powerful character just mowing their opponents down. And the choreography is pretty convincing too. I think it's about as good as you can get where it's not too choppy and stiff, but also not ridiculously over-choreographed where the duel just feels like a rehearsed set of moves. I firmly believe that Star Wars always works best visually when it's animated, but this show gets a pass in this category for me. And the cinematography is good for the most part too. There's some nice shots and I like the way the lighting is implemented in a lot of scenes, especially in that aforementioned forest duel. Also, this isn't really a critique, but the way they cut to the credits is so odd. I can't really explain it, you just gotta see.
An acolyte kills without a weapon. An acolyte kills the dream.
It's just so anticlimactic. However, my main gripe about the show is unfortunately one of the most crucial elements of telling any story, really. The plot. The overall direction of the story, and by extension the pacing, is one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen in Star Wars. The decisions these characters make fall apart when all you have to do is ask one question. Why? Why does May decide to abandon her mission to kill a Jedi at the drop of a dime just because she learns her sister is alive? Why doesn't Sol tell Mog
Sin City wasn't made
that they've encountered a Sith? Wouldn't that be something worth mentioning? Why doesn't the Witch Mother Lady tell Sol that Ozha has decided to go with the Jedi until after she is stabbed? Why does Torben rush into the witch's compound when they already know how volatile the situation is? All because he wants to go home. He really wants to go home. That's kind of all he talks about. I really don't know why he's so obsessed with going home. It's kind of ridiculous how often he mentions that he wants to go home.
And I want to go home to Coruscant.
I want to return to Coruscant.
Will they let us come home at least?
We just need proof of a virgin, and those girls are the proof. This is our ticket home.
Like, we get it! Shut up! This show really does make the Jedi seem extremely sinister. Like, yes, the Jedi have been shown to be sometimes ignorant and foolish about certain things, but they're never just straight up evil, and that really seems to be what the show is going for here. And why does Sol assume that May couldn't possibly have survived that fall?
But I saw her fall. No one could have survived that.
Can I just say that I hate that trope so much? Character just takes it as fact that another character is dead because there is just no chance they possibly could have survived. And to absolutely no one in the audience's surprise, they in fact do survive. And the pacing of this show is just abysmal. Aside from the fight in the woods and some aspects of the Soul/Khmer fight, I was fighting the urge to take a big ol' snooze. I'm tired, okay? I'm tired of bad storytelling in Star Wars. This show is just not interested in relaying the plot in an engaging way. The shots are dry, the delivery is dry, the dialogue is dry. Almost everything about this show is just stuffy and boring, and I just couldn't get on board with it at all. I think this series is definitely an example of how execution is just as important as your concept, because like I said, there are some very cool ideas at play here, but they fall flat just about every time because of the way they are portrayed. Now, in case my channel name didn't tip you off, I like Star Wars. I'm not exactly the most diehard fan, but I've seen pretty much every show and movie, except Rise of Skywalker. I still refuse to watch it. See, I tend to judge Star Wars stuff very differently than I would a lot of other sci-fi media. Whether it's good, bad, or anywhere in the middle, I'll probably still find a way to enjoy it, because I've loved it since I was a kid. It played an instrumental role in my childhood. I became enamored with this world, and it instilled a love for the craft of film into me. And those are just some nostalgia goggles that you can't take off. Now, speaking in terms of The Acolyte, there are some elements to it that piqued my interest, and there are some cool moments here and there, but they're not enough to make it engaging or memorable. The good and the bad combine to make a semi-below average TV series, and that is when these shows are at their worst for me, when there is nothing I can take away from it. With that in mind, The Acolyte will be getting a 4 out of 10 for me. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not the best either. I'm gonna go take that nap now. See you in the next one.